Hey there, and welcome back to Brass Tacks, our video series on our tough challenges of moving ideas to action. I'm Nico Chin, founder of Up With Community, a practice for connecting into our personal power for change. I'm here today with Aram Mitchell, Executive Director of Renewal in the Wilderness. And I'm here today because Aram and I had the chance to chat about 3 months ago, maybe 3 months ago, about how we really stay grounded during this time. And I took some of the points of our conversation and started to try to apply them in my life and found that I was still really stuck on staying in my body. And so I wanted to come back and revisit that conversation again here on Brass Tacks and really talk about how we stay in our bodies as we move through multiple crises and long-term structural injustice, particularly tied to racial injustice and anti-Black violence. So Aram, before we dive into that, I wanted you to share a little bit about what you do in the world.
Right on. Well, thank you, Nico, for inviting me to get down to brass tacks with you. My name is Aram, and I guide wilderness trips for people doing good things in the world. So if you identify as someone doing good things in the world, then I'd love to guide you on a wilderness trip. If you identify as someone who's doing bad things in the world,
not welcome,
or won't bring you back. How's that sound? And I do that work through an organization called Renewal in the Wilderness. And our core aim is really to help the helpers, to reach out to folks who are doing the hard daily work of strengthening the ecology of justice in the world, to help keep their spirits fresh, to help keep their strength up. By guiding them on encounters with the wild stuff in the world and the wild stuff within them as well. So yeah, that's what I'm up to when I'm not sitting in front of the computer.
That's great. Well, and I love the way you said that, the wild stuff within us, because I think that has been one of the biggest challenges for me in this moment. You know, when COVID-19 started, my husband and I restructured our lives around trying to continue to sustain an income and take care of aging parents that we love and care for, and a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old in our house, and wanting to do that in a way that's just really caring and kind and compassionate. And then, you know, we both work in racial justice spaces. We both work on racial justice, and with the racial justice uprisings that have come so thankfully in this time, right? You know, I identify as someone who wants to be in solidarity with the fight for Black lives. See that as a part of my own liberation as a person of color. And there is a wildness inside of me as I try to hold all of the complexities of this moment. And so one of the conversations that I wanted to start with you is, you know, what insights and learnings have you gathered on your journey that can help us stay in and with the wildness inside of us? I'm curious about it and move through it.
Wow, thanks for that. And I also identify as someone who wants to and tries to stand in solidarity with the movement for Black lives. I think one of the things that I am learning in this moment of kind of raising consciousness, at least raising consciousness for me and for a lot of folks in our communities, is that like kind of that claim of desire to be in solidarity, that claim of allyship, isn't like a culminating point, right? The allyship isn't something that I get to claim. It's really something that I have to earn. And I'm speaking from myself as a person with a white body, that I don't get to claim it. I have to earn that. That is something that is a deep lesson that I'm learning as I'm considering how my body situates in this world. And love to talk some more about that, but also to speak in kind of some general ways about what it looks like to be situated as a body in the world. I think of guiding encounters with wilderness as something kind of other than and beyond like outdoor recreational experiences, right? Other than and beyond like high octane wilderness adventures, right? Like, I love that stuff. That's not the stuff I'm talking about when I'm talking about encounters with wilderness. I'm thinking about not only engaging with wild nature and deepening our relationship with other instances of wild nature, and just kind of the stuff that that does for us as human animals, but also I'm speaking about how those encounters can can strengthen us and inform us in wilderness seasons, right? You think about the idea of wilderness and how it functions in so many different ways as a metaphor. And you think about moving through wilderness seasons, right? Whether it's, we think it, one of the oldest instances of the wilderness experience that I can think of is when the Hebrews are moving through the wilderness, right, on their way to the promised land, or even like the Buddha under the Bodhi tree, or Jesus being tempted in the desert, or Harriet Tubman guiding people through the conduit of wilderness toward liberation, right? Like these transformative wilderness experiences, none of them are a razor thin threshold where you pass from one thing to another. They're plateaus. And if you engage a plateau experience of wilderness with your body, you have to find a pace that allows you to continue to engage it, right? Like it's not just going to happen. And I think, well, early on in kind of the COVID-19 closures, like recognizing, this, this isn't a marathon, or this isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. And then kind of grappling with the white guilt of like waking up to what should have been and is so obvious in the world after seeing George Floyd murdered by police, recognizing that I want to do something, I want to fix this. That's like, I can't just fix it. This is a wilderness experience that we have to pass through. And to white people that are listening, I think a lot of us are still like dangling our toes on the edge of the wilderness, right? So many people are in the wilderness doing the hard work of becoming more fully human. And to get there, we need to catch up as white people. Like we have to have the courage to engage that hard slog. It's not a sprint, it's a plod. And to be able to sustain that, we have to find ways to like literally keep our bodies alive in this work, right? Like we have to stay hydrated, literally, on these like hot days. I don't know what else. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing to stay alive in the midst of all of this?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think one of the interesting things is I've always identified as a city girl. And that was actually very much tied into my identification as a person of color. And, my father is from India. I got to go back there a while ago and kind of see that wilderness that was around the city that he grew up in.
Wow.
But a lot of my experience growing up was actually being distanced from nature, right? And a lot of kind of the identification that I had with BIPOC folks was, we're city folks.
Right.
This nature thing, that's not us. That's those other people. That's those other people over there. Yeah. And it really was this continuing of internalized oppression to deny my own ancestral relationships to land. Yes. And so I think it's not an accident that when my husband and I were looking for a place to kind of start to build our family, we actually chose a place that was near wilderness. And so my daughter, she goes out barefoot running with my husband every morning.
I love that.
And before this call, I was scraping dirt off of her and her little brother's feet. Yes. They just went for a barefoot walk in the woods.
That'll preach. That's good.
Yeah, and so I think right now I would tell you, Aram, I'm in these like baby steps. And in some ways, my kids are like further ahead in that, if there's like a linear journey there, right? Like they're just like a little more free. Like we went to this beach the other weekend and it was muddy. Yeah. And I was like, I don't go in the mud. And then my daughter started running into the mud, and she was like, "Come on, Mom, get after it," which is like one of our like little family phrases.
Get after it.
Being in our bodies. Let's get
Yeah.
after it. We're going to be in our bodies. And I was like, this 4-year-old is inviting me to be in my body. But all of those messages I have about that land is for someone else, that experience is someone else's, and it's messy, it's scary, I don't know what's there. Like, all of that stuff is the same stuff that's keeping me from having the impact I want to have on racial justice.
Oh,
right?
wow.
When I need racial justice to be clean and perfect.
Yes, thank you.
When I need racial justice to be linear and appropriate. I can't actually do the work that I need to do.
Yeah.
And so I would say to you, your original question, Aram, like, what are you up to, Nico? I would say it's like, I am getting messages from the universe to get messy.
Yes.
And I think one of the best places to be messy is in the wild. And I'll stop there and I'll come back to the next idea, but I want to hear your thoughts.
I hope you will. You're taking me to church. This is great. But yeah, like we've talked, our conversation 2 months ago, 3 months ago, 17 years ago, whenever that was, right? We were talking about staying grounded in the midst of crisis, right? And now we're thinking about how do we stay embodied as bodies that are compelled by gravity, right? To be ground bound in the midst of multiple crises. And that image of groundedness, like I think a lot about wilderness and its relationship to spiritual formation, right? And I think of spiritual formation as like what it means to be truly human, right? So, and I think actually like using the ideas of groundedness, earthiness, wildness, messiness is actually a really important step for a lot of folks in contemplating what it means to be spiritually mature. Because oftentimes spirituality has a sort of airy sense of levity to it. And like, I can go there with you, so one of my favorite instances of this is my little T tag, that says, it used to say you are unlimited, but I changed it to you aren't unlimited, because like the idea of you are unlimited is like, I can do all of the things, but like, what does it mean to have a grounded, gritty, messy spirituality, right? What does it mean to like hunker down and like root down for the sake of reaching out, right? There is that outward reaching. But oh gosh, that's just so good. An invitation from a 4-year-old to get your feet dirty is perhaps like the best instance of like a prompt for spiritual practice that I've heard in a long, long time. So you heard it here, folks. Like, if you're looking for spiritual growth, heed the wisdom of the 4-year-old and go get your feet dirty. And that doesn't have to be running through the mud flats of coastal Maine, right? It could manifest in a lot of different ways. And actually, like, once again, like high octane wilderness adventure is not the same thing as like listening to the elemental stuff and the elemental call within your body, right? And to connect with the elemental stuff outside of your body. You can open a window, take a deep gulp of that air, and just like follow that air all the way through your body. Like, that's an encounter with wildness.
Yeah, and I think, there's so much that tells us about the messengers and the messages that can come through. Both being in relationship to wild, having experiences in wild, and I often think about, when we encase ourselves and disconnect ourselves from the systems that we need to stay healthy, how can our decisions be healthy?
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true.
And I think there's so many manifestations right now where people are saying, like, I am having this backache, I am having this headache, I am having this foot ache. For me, I had like a tip of my head to my very toe just on my left side. And I had to spend time with a healer talking about like, what is the message of this pain? Because it's not just that I cross my legs and I'm in a different, it's that I'm crossing my legs to protect myself from something, right? So there is like I'm trying to go into something, right?
Yeah.
And that is also manifesting the pain, and these things are interconnected, right? One of the things that we'll put in the notes for this video is I'm uncovering Michael Gack's work on self-acupressure. And he has 2 books in particular, one just about how to do self-acupressure at home, and the other is self-acupressure for emotional healing.
Come on.
And it really is, one of the things that I shout a lot in meetings is we're plants, not robots. Like that we actually were created with the trees.
Yes.
And there's a thing that we're, and I think there are a lot of scientific, more Western words for the knowledge that you and I are talking about. And what I don't try to do is either co-opt indigenous languages to describe it, or just use Western of the last 40 years science thing. But for me, saying, I'm still uncovering what my own traditions are as I try to decolonize myself and reclaim myself.
Yeah.
But there are these knowledges that are in our bodies in relationship to wilderness experiences that give us the messages we need to make the healthier decisions in the boardroom, in the team room.
That's right. That's right. I think the idea of wilderness as a place that we go to but are not meant to remain, right? Like as a place that we go to, within that idea of wilderness, which is just one idea of wilderness, but within that kind of concept, wilderness is already orienting us back home, right? Like it's not about an escape from our work in the world. It's about sustaining and strengthening our capacity to come home with something to make home better, right? And so whether it's going on a 3-day canoe trip to get that full on cognitive clarity, just deep soul level sigh of relief so that you can come back refreshed, or whether it's having just a regular practice of taking 3 deep breaths out the window at some point first thing with your cup of coffee in the morning, and probably kind of a both ends of all of these different things. It makes me think, I brought this down because I thought it might come to it, but this is something that I have on my refrigerator, and it's a picture of my cat that I drew, followed by a line from Mary Oliver that you only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Saint Mary, right? Which, given the insight that you were just sharing, that if we do that, right? If we go into our bodies, then we are contributing to what I called earlier the ecology of justice, or the ecology of compassion, or right, the multifaceted nature of contributing to the common good. If that's the case, if we are embodied, connected, strong in our capacity, and clear in our convictions, which I think that wild is a great source of clarity when it comes to that, then that's what we have to do. Listen to the soft animal of our body, not because that's enough, but because that's the foundation of getting that stuff back into the world. I love that. Plants, not machines. Mammals, not machines.
And what I love about what you just shared in that drawing is that there's so many of us that don't have access to wilderness right now, and that are living in places where we can't access our parks. It's not safe to access our parks. We can't because we're working 12, 14-hour days. There's so many different reasons, but to bring the experience of wilderness into our homes, whether it's by picking a little leaf, on our walk to the groceries and bringing it back and putting it in a little cup of water, opening the window, getting into our senses of smelling, of taste, of sound. I used to think about those as those are those ethereal things you do to be perfect, and I'm not interested in that. That's just capitalism. That's white supremacy culture, trying to
Yes.
co-opt something and turn it into something else. Like, I think what we're really talking about is going into bodies so we have courage to go into the tough stuff. Going into bodies so we have messages to take on pain and grieving and sorrow. Those things aren't separate experiences. There's not like happiness over here,
Yeah.
pain and grieving over here.
Yeah.
These are actually like interconnected experiences that need each other so that they can exist. Like, what is happiness without a pain? What is pain without happiness, right? So we have to, so when we're in our bodies, we actually get to see that these things are interconnected, and that lets us move through them.
Yeah.
The ecology of justice.
Yeah. That's right. Yes, I resonate so hard with that. And I think one of the things, as someone who's helping to lead an organization, right, called Renewal in the Wilderness, there is this sort of implied levity behind the name of the organization that I guide, right? Like I was speaking about spiritual levity versus kind of that gritty spirituality earlier. There is this desire, like organizational desire and imperative that me and my leadership team are trying to lean into to comfort and encourage folks who are committed to the common good, right? And looking to strengthen those efforts. One of the things that I think it's important for us in particular as an organization that has an all-white board of directors, all-white staff, you're looking at it. Most of the folks that we guide or that our messaging goes out to are white readers in a pretty white state in the United States. That one of the things that we need to be doing organizationally and among ourselves, like within the context of that white community, is not only how can we engage wilderness as a source of comfort, but also how can we be engaging this idea of wilderness as a source of confrontation, as something that not only helps to comfort our overwhelmed spirits, but also agitates the spirit of apathy within each of us. So that's some of the stuff I don't know. I'm afraid I don't know the answers to that, but like that's some of the internal organizational work that we're leaning into right now in the midst of all this. I think it's important.
Well, Aram, tell us, where can we find your work? How can people connect with you?
Definitely. Renewalinthewilderness.org is a great landing place. I would love for folks to subscribe to our notes, renewalinthewilderness.org/notes. You can subscribe to our newsletters. I send updates, and there's some other voices that put stuff out there as well. That's really the best place to stay up to date with what's coming next year in terms of in-person retreats and the stuff we're doing in the meantime to explore all of this stuff. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram. You can follow and like us there as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for this time. I've got some good brain food to take with me.
Me too.
And I appreciate this time together.
You're welcome. Thank you, Nico. Thank you.